my quilt binding strip pieces that I'm going to sew together. So you want to make sure that your binding strips at the fabric side, that they're facing each other. I'm going to go ahead and use the ruler and place this directly on top, and I'm going to draw a straight line from corner to corner. And this is going to be my sew line. Do the exact same thing with these pieces. Again, I have the fabric piece is facing up. This piece is going to be placed face down. I'm using the ruler to go ahead and lay it on top so I can draw my line. And again, I'm sewing directly on this line. You can use the quilt binding ruler to trim off the extra part of the binding. This is a 1/4 inch line, so all you need to do is lay the 1/4 inch line along the stitching line, and I'm going to go ahead and use my rotary cutter to cut. And then I also like to trim off this little extra bit right here. I'm coming up to the corner of the quilt. I'm going to go ahead and stitch a little bit further. I just want to be sure to leave enough room so that my ruler fits right in the corner of the quilt right here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and lay the ruler so it's lined up along the edges of the quilt, and there's the little corner cutout right here that I'm going to go ahead and use. So I'm going to grab my pen and I'm going to mark a little dot, and this is going to be the spot where my needle will stop. And at this point, you can either stop the needle at this point and go ahead and back stitch and then continue sewing the binding, or you can go ahead and draw a diagonal line and you can sew directly off the corner of the quilt. So here I'm going to stop just at the dot, and I'm going to go ahead and backstitch. I'll rotate the quilt and then fold up my binding. And at this point, it's really important to make sure that everything is lined up. You don't want your binding hanging off the edge up here like that. You want to go ahead and square everything and make sure that it's all lined up so you can see that that's even up there as well as the side. And I'm going to continue sewing the binding. Now it's time to join the two binding tails together. I'm going to go ahead and use the quilt binding ruler to help me join the two tails together. So the binding ruler is designed for either 2.5 inch binding width or 2 1/4. So I'm going to go ahead and be using the 2.5 inch side of the ruler since my binding width strips are cut to 2.5. So you always want to be sure to leave plenty of room. This is about 10 to 12 inch space here. So I like to go ahead and lay the ruler directly in the middle. And I'm going to lay this bottom piece of the binding flat down. And I'm going to go ahead and mark a little dot right here at the edge of the binding ruler. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this. And I'm going to be sure that the ruler is lined up directly with the piece that I just cut. And I'm gonna grab this top piece and lay it directly on top and smooth it out. And I'm going to go ahead and mark a dot right here. This is gonna be my second cut line. So you can either go ahead and cut this right now, or you can go ahead and extend the ruler so that you can draw an actual line to cut on. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and sew the two pieces together. I like to go ahead and gather up some of the quilt and put a little clip on it to hold everything together. And then we're gonna grab this piece here and we're going to go ahead and lay it so it's face up. And then this piece of the binding, we're going to open it up and then lay it directly on top, making sure that the fabrics are facing each other. And at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and grab a pin and pin these two pieces in place. And again, I'm going to use the binding ruler to draw my line, and this is going to be my sewing line. I'm going to go ahead and sew directly on the line I just drew. So I'm going to go ahead and trim. You can see my stitching line here. I did sew in red thread so you could see, but basically I'm gonna be cutting right at a 1/4 inch. So go ahead and just eyeball that. Okay. And I'm gonna smooth out this seam. And as you can see, that's the exact width that I needed, and the binding lays completely flat. I'm gonna go ahead and continue sewing. And it's always a good idea to backstitch at this point just to lock your stitches together. Okay, so this is what it looks like once it's finished. I wanted to go ahead and share what the corners look like. So I'm going to pop the fabric over to the back side. And that's what the corner looks like.